Ready?
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, Adrian, talk to us about your podcast.
Sure. It's a bit of this and that. Okay, all right, let's do it. Hey, Carl, how you going, mate?
Not bad.
Thanks for being on the podcast today.
That's all right.
We're having another crack at it with some more finely tuned microphone wear, so it's good today.
And some more personality.
And so, yeah, we're throwing a bit of personality for it. Which brings me to a very good first point, is that you're an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And engineering can, I think, for a lot of people be associated, especially civil engineering, associated with sort of just roads. Perhaps we'll say mundane. I'm looking at, you and I know it's not, but perhaps for someone looking outside of engineering, they see it as perhaps being about some of the more the mundane constructed facilities and systems in our world. But in relation to what the potential of engineering is and where we're going with it in the future, especially of what we thought we'd talk about today on the sustainable side of things, there's great scope there, and a great scope for imagination especially. So
yeah, engineering is a massive discipline. I mean, it runs from aeronautical, mechanical, civil, into hydrology and hydraulics, you sort of water and environment engineering. And when you think about sustainability, engineering is all about bringing technology to the fore for the advancement of society. So when we start thinking about, well, how are you going to manage climate change? How are you going to prepare society for the future? Engineering has to be at the heart of it.
yeah.
So myself, I've got a master's in geotechnical engineering, a background in civil construction, so I've done bits of this and bits of that, and then for the last 8 years I've been working in water management. So
Sure.
you know, engineering is one of those amazing fields where you can dabble at lots of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we're at a point in time right now where a lot of the talk about what needs to be done has got to a point where it needs to be transitioned to actually doing. And we're seeing different organisations and people and different systems that are being incorporated and using engineering. I'm thinking of like Tesla with renewable energies, for example, what that kid is doing with a great plastic garbage sweep in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
You know, using these principles of engineering to go back to like finding solutions for these problems, but then also what I thought we'd be good to discuss today is where can we position ourselves and which direction we can go, and what can we incorporate in going into the future. What are the things that we have potential to look at that we're perhaps not looking at now, especially in regards to renewable energy, but also way we use water and reuse water as well is a big one. So yeah, how do you feel like how do you feel like the state of play is at the moment with where we are from an engineering perspective, and where do you feel some good options moving forward, or things to look at least?
I think perhaps the good one to reflect on is our nerdy little conversation around batteries or hydrogen.
Yeah, sure.
And when you think about that conversation about, well, okay, which technology is it going to be in the future? You sort of start to realise that actually maybe it won't be one or the other, maybe it'll be both.
Yeah.
And that's because we're at this amazing space right now where there's lots of invention happening. And it seems like every time you read the news, every time you read new articles, someone is coming up with something different, a different way to attack the same problem.
Sure.
So I sort of feel like we're in that space where there's lots of invention occurring, but not necessarily very clear pathways forward like there would have been in the past.
Yeah, that's right, because I think a lot of people, when they think about like energy consumption from renewable sources, they think of the powertrain as being like lithium batteries, and that's the big buzz at the moment. But you know, we've had hydrogen for a long time as well, and that's also undergoing a renaissance in its technological improvement. But we wouldn't want just one source of energy. We would want multiple, and work out what's going to be the most effective for us and let the market decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well as that, I think the consumers here are the people who are going to play a big role as well.
For sure.
Because when you think about battery electric, that potentially is so far more disruptive than hydrogen, which is something you put in your tank.
Yeah.
But obviously battery electric's only good as a renewable source of energy if you're generating it from clean energy source for your electricity. And obviously as long as you can mine the rare earth minerals without screwing over the planet in the process.
Yeah.
So they've all got the pros and cons, but obviously from a consumer perspective, batteries would just be brilliant because there's nothing to put in your tank for your regular commute.
It's no fuss. Yeah.
But if you want to go on a long journey, then hydrogen probably does start to kick the pants off the battery because you can fill it in 5 minutes and it'll do 600 kilometers. So.
Sure, that's right. Yeah. And so where were some of the blocks that hydrogen was happening, and what is it that they've been working on? I know you've been looking into this a fair bit over the last 2 to 3 years. What are some of the advances that we've found in hydrogen?
So I mean, disclaimer, by no way neither you nor I experts on this field. But I mean,
in the University of Bro Talk we are, but yeah.
In terms of what I've been reading about, is that it seems like the big block with hydrogen is the energy intensity to generate the hydrogen.
Right.
So the big thing they've been working on unlocking is generating hydrogen from renewable sources and lowering that energy intensity to extract the hydrogen. So Australia with the CSIRO have done that work looking at creating hydrogen out of ammonia using nanotechnology, which is just amazing, using a filter screen. Obviously takes a lot of the energy intensity out of it. The other issue for hydrogen seems to have been the whole transfer and distribution network. Obviously everyone's got electricity these days, pretty much.
Sure, yeah, that's right. I mean, and I feel that's where the lithium battery network is that little bit further ahead at the moment, is that they have infrastructure that has been developed over the last 2 or 3 years and is improving, whereas hydrogen is, I keep going to say hydrogen is a little bit behind that at the moment.
Yes and no. So I was reading recently about the Nikolai Badger, and they're on about using the water pipe network, and then you'd strip the hydrogen off the water supply. But I mean, how that's going to work, who knows? So I mean, one of those YouTube clips we looked at had like an independent system set. It was set up in a sea container, I think it was. It was like $100,000 unit. So that was to convert it. That was to convert it into electricity. So you could perhaps have one of those hydrogen converters from a water in what would formerly have been a petrol station or something like that. But this is where you have to start thinking about like an engineer as well, which is then ask the questions around the implications of that. So where my brain goes when you start saying that is, okay, does our water supply network have the capacity to handle that? What does that mean for the rest of our system?
For sure.
And it's the same when we start talking about renewables and disruptive technology. It's all great to say let's all use batteries, but if we're all trying to charge our car at the same time overnight when there's no renewable source of power coming into the system, where are you generating the base load to run the car from?
That's right. Because can you imagine like when the road does become pretty much all electric vehicles, most of that charging is going to go on at night time, and if it's from a lot of the people who haven't yet, the whole residential domestic storage of power hasn't really hit to a point yet where you could just work it off that. You would probably have to draw from the mains, and that's a great charge to draw at night time or in the evenings. So we'd have to consider that. When there's no solar, exactly.
Possibly no wind.
And we'd have to be burning the fossil fuels to generate that energy.
And I think this is where actually engineering has a massive part to play in this whole discussion over sustainability, because that is very much more an engineering way of thinking, which is to say, okay, what are the implications of that decision? How do I mitigate that?
Sure. What do we need to set up, or what do we need to do? What structural processes do we have?
It's not as simple as just being a green warrior and strapping yourself to the top of a plane and saying that flying is bad.
Sure. Exactly.
Lots of things are bad or good. But it just comes down to considering it from a whole system perspective.
Sure. And in engineering, that's the key, right? Is to look at that. Well, for a good engineering, at least anyway, is to be able to look at all facets of it and look at the chain as it goes through, not just the final outcome.
I mean, look, fundamentally, the way you're taught in engineering is to consider things as a system, and then to consider the implications of each of those elements as they interact. So when we design structures, we consider multiple ways that a structure could fail and multiple forces that act on the structure, and then we try and make sure that those things don't come to pass in a negative fashion.
Sure.
We also work with what we call serviceability limits and ultimate limits. The idea being that you can go past your serviceability limit, but at least people don't die because they can safely get out of a building. And if you take that thought process, that way of thinking, and apply it to other problems like sustainability, it's really about saying to yourself, well, okay, what can we do on a day-to-day, and actually where is the ultimate line? What shouldn't we go across?
Yeah.
And how do we tackle this problem with many moving parts?
Yeah, sure.
To make sure that we actually do get the right outcomes.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
I'm also personally, again, not saying I'm an expert in this field, but I'm of the view that I don't think as a society we'll get out of the climate change that's occurring without intervention. I think we've already made an intervention, so surely an intervention the other way is potentially a good thing. I don't think it's going to be enough to just say, well, let's not burn fossil fuel. I think that would be too simplistic.
So what do you mean in regards to intervention?
Well, it's that whole contentious topic of geoengineering.
Right.
So do we start looking at using oceans as carbon sinks?
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
Which I know...
From which most of the carbon comes from.
That's anyway, right. As oceans warm, they acidify, but they also release carbon store.
Yeah.
We could also equally go the other way and use interventions to absorb carbon back into oceans.
Sure, yeah.
And again, I'm not saying no other solutions here, but I'm just saying that when you look at this problem and you look at it from the outside with a sort of limited view of it, but you sort of look and you go, well, surely we can't just expect everything to reset if we just stop doing something.
Yeah,
Will that be enough?
Yeah, sure.
Will we get there fast enough?
Yeah.
Probably not, is my view. I reckon we'll end up needing to rely on some interventions, some other systems.
Yeah. Well, we know also that they're looking at the ability to use pollutants as an energy source as well, right? So recapturing that carbon or recapturing whatever that pollutant may be and using that as an energy form and source itself.
A really cool one that'll probably get the Greens up in arms is the ability to produce crude oil out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, right, sure, yeah.
I don't know if that's completely a win, but we all need plastic, right?
Yeah, well, that's something I was thinking about this morning, right? Even if we tackle this renewable energy side of things, where we get our power from, the next big thing really is going to be the petrochemical / plastics realm as well. I mean,
100%.
We haven't even really touched on the issues.
Well,
we've started doing things like banning plastic straws and plastic bags and things like that, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg in regards to that issue.
I mean, even on the weekend I was painting wood at home, and there's jobs where you just don't go water-based, and even water-based paints are still petrochemical effectively based.
Sure. Yeah.
So, everyone is using oil, everyone is using plastics, whether we like it or not. Hydrocarbons are part of our world. Yeah. And we just can't 100% get off them.
No, that's right, yeah. Well, there's not an economic initiative to get off them from a lot of the suppliers that we get this from though too, right? But I know like Andrew Forrester, from Fortescue Meta Group, he's putting like a whole bunch of money, I think millions of dollars, into working out ways to like reduce the cost of increase the cost of plastics to a value for which they can then be reused, and they're a value to be reused, recycled. Where at the moment there's no real value in recycling plastics and doing anything with it.
Yeah, no, I read, again, not my complete special area, but I read something really interesting that basically said you can't actually recycle plastic in the way that we can recycle glass. So if you take a glass bottle, smash it down, reheat it, you can make another glass bottle.
Right.
Plastic loses some of its polymers, loses some of its integrity every time you recycle it. So they actually more talk about downgrading it.
Yeah, okay.
So if you start with a high quality plastic, next time it becomes a slightly lower quality. And
so
on. So you've got that problem with plastic of permanent downcycling.
Yeah, but what a massive setup that would be, an undertaking to be able to classify all these plastics and set up this hierarchy of plastics. And
100% at the moment, you need to talk to Matt about waste. Waste is fascinating.
Yeah.
At the moment,
I should get him on that. Yeah, he'd be good to talk to on this as well, actually.
At the moment with our waste in Australia, we're a bit sort of behind other parts of the world where we just say, here are my recyclables, and we drop them all in one big bucket.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do recycling properly, you need to look at, say, how the Japanese do it and the Koreans, where they've got different stream segments right the way down to saying, well, this is a HP3 plastic, a HP4, a HP5.
Sure.
So then you can properly segregate the waste and stream it for recycling.
Sure, that Japanese precision. In Australia we're just like, just chuck it all in the hole, it'll be fine. What's the cheapest I can do it for?
Look, and fact that we haven't got those capacities onshore is also a problem, because you look at what's happened since the Chinese have said, well, we're not taking your waste anymore.
I know a bit about that, but for our viewers as well, can you explain? Because I don't think many people are still really aware of what's going on with that. But what are those shifts that we've seen in the last 12 months in regards to our recycling?
Massive geopolitical shift that we've had with recycling. And again, recycling experts are the one to tell you about it. But China and India have both said, we don't want to take your waste anymore, simply because of, one, politics, and two, they're saying we've got enough of this stuff, which has then meant in Australia we've had a massive problem, because our whole model of managing our waste is put it in the empty boat and send it back to China.
Yeah, mainly recyclables though, right? Is what we're sending over.
We send over our scrap metals, our plastics, papers.
Yeah, residential, like domestic and commercial.
Domestic waste.
Yeah.
And obviously with China saying enough, we can't handle it.
Yeah.
We're going, oh, hang on.
Yeah, I know, right?
What
do we do now? We haven't
what
got
do we
anything.
do now?
Yeah, what do we do with this? I mean, one article I read was about how, like, one was sent into Indonesia. They just decided they'd had enough of all the, like, it was recyclables, but full of food and oils and dirty nappies and things like that. And so they just sent the sea containers back, which they come from. Like, no, we're not putting up with this anymore. We're not going to have to deal with this. You make sure you sort it out on your end, and then we'll accept it.
And 100%, if you think about it, they're being a bit like the parent with the toddler, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're a parent, I'm a parent.
Sure.
You both do the same. If the kids frigging don't clean the plate and wash their dish after dinner, they go,
send it back,
send
sort
it back,
it out,
do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, you can, because for them, then they're having to deal with, like, getting rid of the waste, and it's a real issue that I mean, we think about carbon dioxides, the need for renewable energy, moving away from fossil fuels, but we don't really talk about pollution that much, and pollution in all its forms. I use the word pollution in a broad term. You could even add in noise pollution, light pollution, things like that. But I mean, one of the main ones that are giving us providing most risk for us in the near future is those of, like we spoke about, petrochemical based pollutions, carbon based pollutions. So from a pollution side of view, I don't really see that we're doing an adequate job at all. Like,
no, 100% agree.
And
again, I don't think many people sit back and think about it, but if you think about the journey that our economies, obviously Australia and UK in my case as well, have been on over the last 50, 60 years, we've kind of been a bit lazy, and we haven't really tackled pollution. What we've said is we've played handball.
Yeah.
We've said, oh, well, if that looks a bit dodgy and it's going to pollute our atmosphere to do that job, well, we'll just let someone else do it.
We'll just outsource it.
We've just outsourced the problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. The old.
So it's interesting that the outsourcing is now coming back to us, and now we're in that position where we're going, oh, we're just not set up to deal with that.
Yeah.
But that's also an exciting opportunity, or it should be.
Well, it should be, yeah. If we have, we have the knowledge here, right? We have the capital, but it's like, do we have the will? That's why one of my main queries is that we don't have the will by, not only the public probably, through probably not enough education around the issues, but certainly by government and by major industry, who really have been, like you said, for decades, just about pushing the problem away and letting someone else sort it out.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe when you think about the world, some trends will all play together, but we seem to be living in a time where things are becoming a bit more national interest rather than international interest.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting just to see how all that rolls out, particularly with companies like Google and Facebook and those sort of people who are actually multinational in the true sense now.
Sure.
How they actually play by the rules. In some ways, we're kind of back to the future. We're back to the stage of having these big companies which dictate things in nation states which are very self-interested.
Yeah, right. And so there's a discord there fundamentally where the individual can be negatively affected.
Yeah, because the big company doesn't really give two rats.
Yeah, not at all.
And obviously the nation state is self-absorbed.
Yeah, exactly.
Not taking the sort of broad view of life that perhaps Western democracies did through the latter part of the 20th century.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a good example of that, I guess, is, I mean, it's worked out well I'm thinking of like what Ireland did in regards to bringing some of these massive multinationals to their country, dramatically lower company tax rates and allow these companies like Google, Facebook, is Amazon even based out of there now, I think? it's quite a number of large companies, and the Irish people gain in some ways, I guess, in the acute job prospects, but in other ways they're taking a massive, what that could be a much more beneficial fund for their infrastructure by having dramatically lowered company tax rates.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what's going on as well with those places, when Ireland joined the European Union, Ireland actively set about having the lowest corporation rates they could in Europe,
Right.
which was a really clever play on their part, which is say, let's be totally business friendly and attract these massive international companies into our country for inward investment.
Do what Singapore did 5 decades ago.
I think flip side is that personal taxation in Ireland has probably not had the same focus.
Sure.
And from people I've spoken to, they've also said, oh, it's pretty expensive to live there now, taxes are pretty high, you don't get much for it.
So for meals and things like that, services.
What's the result? They've fundamentally kicked out all their politics of the last 30 odd years, and they're voting in Sinn Féin. Which is really a sort of reaction vote, which is if the main parties don't listen, we'll vote for someone else. So, you look at what's gone on in the UK, and you look at what's going on around Europe at the moment. And that's all evidence of that trend of more and more self-interest and national focus and less big picture thinking.
Yeah, that's a really good segue, Cal. I think that's something I'm interested in from afar, the political scape in Great Britain, because obviously we've seen massive undergoings with the Brexit happening and things like that, but I'm particularly interested in Ireland as well, and the Northern Ireland and Ireland divide. But do you feel like what's been occurring in the systems that have been sort of being brought into place politically, that Northern Ireland and Ireland could have a space for open dialogue now, and to talk about, hey, well, this is what's going on over there, it's not really who we are as Irish people, let's have a chat? Do you think there's that potential?
I think that dialogue's probably been there for a while, but I think there's probably the potential when you look at how like Northern Ireland voted when Brexit was happening. Northern Ireland was kind of a coin toss. They were a lot less anti-Europe than say England and England, and obviously they do have much closer relationships with their neighbour to the south. So you got to obviously ask the question at some point. There is a part of the Good Friday Agreement that they're going to have a vote on potential unification. So you wonder that question's got to come up sooner rather than later.
What's the Good Friday vote?
The Good Friday Agreement. So 1998, when they agreed to end hostilities.
Right.
Let's use that term.
Sure.
A part of that agreement and the restoring of the Stormont as the elected body that leads Northern Ireland was that at some point in time, undefined date, there will be a vote on Northern Ireland unifying with the Republic.
Right, okay, sure. Yep. And so they haven't set a date, but it's there.
It's still there, it's still on the books, it can still happen.
Sure. Do you have a feeling that with what's been going on with Brexit and the issues surrounding that date could be coming closer, or there'll be at least more discussion around it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hard to say.
Hard to say from the outside, and that it is one of those weird places, Northern Ireland, isn't it, where I reckon you need to be on the inside of it to fully understand it.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, looking from the outside in, you'd have to say, well, with that there, at some point people are going to say, well, why don't we have that vote?
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely.
It just
makes sense.
Be obvious, wouldn't it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So are you happy to talk a bit about Brexit as well? We're going to get into the engineering path. We might go back to that as well, but it's something I'm really interested in too. But like how it shapes up the Brexit vote, how it shapes up for like, I mean, it also plays itself out in the rest of geopolitics now. Like we're such a we live in a world that's fairly condensed and it's growing smaller every day, and this world of like globalization in which we're in now, a political decision by one country can and does affect the goings on in the rest of the world. So with the Brexit one, like what do you feel like the true signs, like the undercurrent of what was going on in Great Britain, or I'll just say Great Britain, or because it's Brexit as we know it, that led to these decisions being made, and how and now we're 2 months post or 3 months post sort of finalising it. What do you think has brought us to where we are now, and potential future goings on as well?
I think it's that whole conversation we had around, well, more national interest, less global thinking, and also at the same time.
So decentralisation.
Yeah, decentralisation. In some ways, that's not necessarily a bad thing for people,
No.
right? Because decentralisation should mean you get more control and more say over the things that affect your life.
Yeah, think global, act local.
Yeah, and obviously it'll be interesting to see how the whole thing plays out when you do have these big multinational corporations which sort of sit there and are almost ambivalent to the goings on of individual little countries.
Yeah, they're a law unto themselves.
Yeah, and let's face it, UK might be the 5th largest economy in the world at the moment, but it's hardly as significant as it was in the past. It's only going to become less significant in the world. So
probably, yeah, unless I think,
these big companies will just sort of, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I think Brexit was massively about just not listening.
Right.
You've got a political class, particularly in the UK example, that are based out of London. You've got the London bubble. They hear the echo chamber of what goes on within the southeast corner and think that's the voice of the nation.
Yeah, sure.
But you've got massive parts of that country that have been left behind.
Yep.
There's big sections of it where people weren't seeing the benefits from European membership. They're not seeing the benefits of global migration. All they're seeing is lost income potential, no investment in their hometowns, and sort of going,
dwindling infrastructure. And
then you get someone turn up and say, do you know we're paying those people X hundreds of millions a year, and you've got to have all these people turn up on your doorstep to live with you.
I know, right?
So people, it was a massive vote of people just saying enough.
Right. And I guess fairly similar to what happened in the US when Trump got through in regards to it's part of this polarisation we're seeing in politics now, where one group is being represented over here, one group's being represented over there, but there's no dialogue, and there's no broad thinking, and so it's just becoming like this popularity contest about getting this group on side or getting this group on side. Meanwhile, the split has never been greater.
Never been broader.
Yeah.
And I think the Trump thing's really interesting because a lot of people internationally just deplore Trump, but I kind of look at that differently and I say, well, hang on a minute, he won a fair election.
Yeah, he's a symptom.
So if you are deploring of Trump and what he represents, what you're saying is, I fundamentally hate the majority of American people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I just wouldn't say that. I kind of think actually you got to look at what led to him being voted in. What are they actually voting for?
Yeah, exactly.
What is truly motivating people here?
Yeah,
it can't be some of his messages around women and around around his stance on migrants and whatever else. Because some of those things are a bit deplorable.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's not disguise it. He is a pretty deplorable person.
But not something you want to bring home to your parents.
But he has been voted in fairly and squarely by a majority of people in what is the world's leading democracy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think, we saw scenes after he was elected where there'd be these rich white kids in protest saying, he's not my president, he's not my president. But it's that he is your president. Your country, of whom you are a citizen, elected him, so that means he is your president. Look at why. Instead of expressing your frustration about it and trying to fight it and resist it and overthrow, look at the reasons why. What is the underpinning of this, again I'll use the word symptom, in the form of Donald Trump rising up and being president.
That's a really good segue as well back to things like sustainability, because you look at a lot of the movements.
Oh, that's good, Carl. That's good.
You look at a lot of the movements that happen, you look at the whole Greta Thunberg thing, and you kind of go, well, why are we listening to this 16-year-old who's basically just telling us to do something? Why have we got people having sit-ins and protests? That's great, a protest. You're protesting about a symptom. But what are you actually doing, Have you actually looked at the why? Have you looked at the causes, the consequences of choices, and how we got to where we're at?
That's right. We focus too much on the narrative, right? Rather than the whys of what's going on.
I think we actually need to look at the whys, the whats, and the hows just a little bit more in life. And I think all these threads come together, and it is very much more a shift in how we handle public discourse these days.
Yeah, but we like getting whipped up into a frenzy when this story comes out about this or that, and like, you know, this person's doing this good thing and that person's doing that good thing, but it's not. It's all like sort of almost like a token gesture. It's just dialogue. Again, it's a story, a narrative that plays out, but it's not getting to the crux of the issue.
And have you read about influencers as well, Adrian? I mean, I think
which type of influencers? I hate influencers.
I'm not saying I've got particularly a lot of time for them, but it shows you about how fast the cycle is now. Because these people, just like how we get whipped into a frenzy so fast, it just blows over so quick.
Yeah.
And if you look at the world of influencers, as fast as they're earning 100k a year, they're broke again because the crowd has moved on.
Right, that's right. Yeah,
you know, you kind of go, well, actually, we're not taking the time anymore to digest quality information and ask ourselves fundamental questions. It's just, I'm aggrieved by that, I'm going to have a reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just a short-term reaction, and then that's it. I'll go about my day and never really do anything more. Yeah,
it's like toddlers just never really quite going through that process of developing the brain power to.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing. We reverted more back to that since the advent of like technology, like mobile phone technology, smartphones, and social media, where our ability to, like you said, to focus on something and have an attention span long enough that we can actually learn and contemplate something has severely diminished. I know it with myself. Like my ability to be able to like sit there and read a book, even like it's greatly diminished from what it used to be. I've actually made a thing. I'm not doing any social media at night. I barely use my phone for social media any day. I use YouTube. I was using quite a lot on my phone, like at night time instead of reading a book. But then I was just like flicking through like a zombie, not really ever focusing on anything. So like in the recent 3 or 4 weeks, I've just gone back to like reading a book at night, doing that, and I've noticed my ability to focus and my attention span has dramatically increased. But it's like to where it should be. But like as a society, we're losing that.
Yeah, massively. I think I definitely agree. I reckon with a lot of these, a lot of what we do now, we've increased the quantity so much, it's come at the expense of quality.
Yeah.
Anyone can access anything at any time, but no one's asking the fundamental questions about, well, is that actually good information?
Yeah, that's right. There's no questioning.
And there's no questioning as to, well, what do I think about that?
Yeah.
What do I see as the solution?
Yeah, that's right. And what can I do?
And what can I do?
Level?
And that doesn't mean protest and strap yourself to aeroplanes.
Yeah.
It means ask yourself.
Yeah, as Jordan Peterson says, start by cleaning up your own room.
Yeah.
You know, metaphorically and literally as well.
Yeah, I mean, and not to give a plug to too many other things, but I was reading the Daily Reckoning actually about all those about the protests, and you kind of go, well, actually they're operating like teenagers appealing to the adults in the room to do something, without fundamentally realising that you voted for those adults to be in power. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, well, and there's an article off that Daily Reckoning I think you sent me about the one journalist, and you know, I understand his point, but I also understand the variations around it. But he was talking about the school student strikes at the end of last year, and he said something like, you know, the strike, I don't know why they don't just learn more about recycling around their home or something like that, you know, and do it themselves. You know, it's a good point. Maybe it's a balance though, you know, it's good to have that public awareness of these issues and people stand up and say, we're not going to take it anymore. But if it comes without actually putting the steps for themselves as individuals, us as individuals, and it's all for naught really.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think people can probably be a little bit too judgmental as well at times, which is also why you get such discourse now. You know, you look at the whole...
Well, judgment separates us.
Too much smashed avo on toast so you can't afford a house. It's just... you know...
Yeah, that's right.
It's just beyond unreasonable. It's just a massive judgment on a whole generation, which you just can't do, right? Yeah,
exactly. Because, I mean, I think for you and I, we were both born in 1980. We're on that cusp of... We're on a bit of both sides there. And... I mean, so I get both points of view. I can also understand now too, well, fuck putting myself in debt with a mortgage. I really enjoy smashed avocado on toast. And I've got one life and I'm going to enjoy that smashed avocado on toast.
100%. You can't bring your house with you.
Yeah, exactly. You can't, when you die, you're not going to bring the house with you. But I've got to also understand the importance of discipline and, you know, being disciplined with your money and focusing on goals. So, that's right. But fundamentally, judgment is the issue and the key thing that does divide us and has an inability for us to converse.
And I think as a nation as well, at a bigger scale, we talk about goals, but we talk about climate agreements and very big targets, but we've all completed projects, right? We've all undertaken large, complex tasks. We don't start or finish a complex task by just focusing on one goal.
Yeah, right.
We break that down into mini segments and
Yeah.
we make choices along the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably part of the conversation that's missing when we talk about sustainability and we talk about pollution is, well, okay, what's my target for this year? What's my target for next year? How do I incrementally get to my agreement that I've made under the Paris Climate Agreement?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's for sure. I mean, even you think about, like, I've learned a lot about like setting goals and what I need to do personally to be able to achieve them. And for me, it's about not making a great goal like that's going to be too hard to get to, but just making small obtainable goals that create that momentum and create that feedback loop of gratitude and gratification as well, that I keep going forward. And on a society level, we need to do the same thing, like you said, like break it down, like what's the next achievable step that we can do here with this as a vision in mind, but back here, what needs to be done? What foundation do I need to build to be able to implement that vision?
And I think as well as that, I think you touched on it earlier, Adrian, but in order to actually effectively address a lot of these issues, we need to fundamentally change how we think about what we do as a society. At the moment, we measure our success or failure by gross domestic produce, which, well, what is that? It's just a measure of activity. So it's just saying we ran around a lot for a year.
Yeah, it's
what
one target or one tail of
you know, qualitatively, was that any good? That running
exactly.
around? Did we go anywhere? Did we achieve anything?
Yeah.
Did we have any targets that we set ourselves as a society that we actually achieved?
Yeah.
And happiness might be one of those things, and gratitude might be some of those things, because people living in a healthy environment feel happier and more connected in their world.
Yeah, and then therefore more efficient and more productive. And that's a really good point. We look at it from a political and also media level, because it's digestible, I guess. It's from such a quantitative standpoint. Okay, we've had this X percentage of increase in this and X percentage decrease in that, and this is where we are. But qualitatively, there's no markers, or there's no discourse around that.
No, I mean, and you look at what we talk about as a media. We talk about when interest rates move. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You know, some bankers decided to change how much the money they made up they're going to charge for it.
Thanks, bankers.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. But we don't talk about, well, have we actually got anywhere with that? Yeah. What was the target for the year?
Sure. And what does that truly mean for a family as well?
Yeah, and what does it truly mean for people?
Beyond just the money.
Yeah. We just spend so much time focused on measurables and not enough time focused on the intangibles that would lead to growth in the world.
Well, that's one of my great optimisms with where we're heading with things like podcasts like this, for example, where we can actually sit down and have these conversations and talk in a long form scenario, not just like a snippet or a soundbite which you may get in the news. Even though we're on this 24-hour news cycle, it's still just full of like sound bites and grabs that can be easily shared as a meme. There's no real, in mainstream media anyway, there's no real long form, deep contemplation of these issues. But podcasting is providing a platform for that.
Yeah, I'm with you massively, and I've recently found the same, which is to switch off, step back, and then enter media and enter electronic media when you want it. So use it as a way to find out what you want to find out, and then make your mind up, rather than just permanently being on that news cycle.
Sure. Yeah. So you use it rather than it
using you,
because it does use us. Like broadly, that's a lot of the issues that we have in our society, is that it uses us, it programs us, like TV programming. It literally does program us to do what it wants, to do what the forces behind it want, and that's to consume and not think and, you know, be distracted. And
don't you think that's a massive opportunity though, where we're heading in the world right now, that the traditional mainstream media sources, the traditional ways that governments have communicated with us, are losing their power, they're breaking down.
That's right.
You know, people aren't watching TV anymore. People might listen to the radio in the car, but they're more likely to listen to a podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Of their choosing.
Yeah. Oh, I think we've already seen really positive changes. And I mean, you think of like these elections that are coming up now, like Bernie Sanders going on the Joe Rogan podcast, for example, like where he gets a viewership that he would not get in any other platform. And he can talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours about some of the subjects that really matter, not just like a 5-minute grab where he has to sort of rush his thinking and his speech. And I think we're seeing some really positive outcomes from that. But there's also a lot of shit that's coming up as well, like a lot of the crap as well. And I think that's important as well, that a lot of the more negative aspects of how we live and how we view the world is seen, and we don't just cover it up and move it aside and put a blanket over it just to focus on the more fluffy, light type stuff.
Yeah, 100% with you. And I actually think that's something which, certainly with both of us being the same age, we can probably reflect on it and see it. But society seems to have less of an ability to handle the tough conversations anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
We're actually we don't seem willing to have the tough conversations, which in the long run probably won't help us out.
Yeah, we're more easily triggered, and we have our ability to contemplate and hold two ideas at once is sort of really gone by the wayside.
And I think the ability to actually be honest about opinion and the ability to be honest around a viewpoint in society has kind of disappeared.
Sure.
I mean, people might disagree, but what's wrong with disagreeing necessarily?
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah, right. Well, that's the fundamental issue that we're seeing, especially in the leftist progressive world, is that, this whole disagreements leading to what's now called like a cancel culture, where they're shouting to the masses that this person should be shut down because they're speaking in a certain way or thinking in a certain way, and I don't agree with it, so let's shut this person down. And a lot of our left-leaning social media are taking that side, and it's creating massive issues.
I think a really great book to revisit at the current time in the current climate is 1984.
Yeah, sure.
Because you look around at the world and you see so much thought speak occurring.
Yeah, exactly. It is,
unreal.
Yeah. I know, right? I mean, it'd be interesting if there's some sort of social establishment of some program to like correct thought speech and all this sort of stuff. I don't think so. I'm optimistic. I think we're heading more the other way. I think we're heading more towards a more holistic look at the ability to converse and to build a discourse that is outside the operating norms which we've been in since post World War II, for example. How that evolves and goes in the future, I'm not too sure. But all I know I can do about that is do what the very best I can do as an individual. I certainly won't be like yelling at people to talk a certain way or think a certain way.
I hope you're right, but obviously, to quote Karl Marx, religion is the opium of the masses, and as soon as you get people onto a bandwagon, they love everyone to agree with them, but don't want anyone to disagree with them. Yeah,
I know, right? Because it's easier, right? Yeah, it is easy to be the opiate, to be sedated.
Yeah, right.
We're sedated in many ways in this society through our food culture, our mass media culture, our religious culture. They're all forms of sedation / domestication.
100%. And the new forms that I personally see us sort of putting out there is, when we start getting on to we must only speak a certain way around certain topics. It just leads us more and more down a road of, if you have a rogue thought, then you are deviant, you are errant.
Yeah, I know, right?
And must be corrected.
Yeah, and the thing is, Carl, we've seen throughout history, right, especially when it's driven by the left socialist type movements, which is from where it's sort of stemming at the moment, this post-Marxist ideology, it usually ends in like millions and millions of people dying.
Yeah, 100%.
And through brute force. I mean, we've seen it time and time again in history. And that's something that, like him or hate him, or dislike him, I should say, Jordan Peterson has been speaking about for a couple of years now, is that we've got to be careful to look at where we're heading at the moment, because it has the same sort of signs of like, Lenin / Stalin movements of, the 1920s and 1930s.
Yeah, I mean, our level of intolerance to certain groups these days is sort of bordering on how it used to be in the past, as you say. I mean, I don't want to draw the parallels directly because it will just get you shut down.
Sure.
But you think about how we're operating with clerical abuse in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just become a whole pariah group, a whole pariah setup.
Yeah.
People probably don't even openly say they're Catholic anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, there's a shame attached to it.
A shame attached to it, and it's legitimate fair game for most people to have a crack at that organisation and the people within it. Well, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with them, but all I'm saying is that as soon as we do that, we've now created an undimension.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And especially when it's quite a toxic one, which we'd have to say the pedophilic realm within that
100%.
is quite, it's not something we want to just like roll up into a ball and chuck away, because that's going to come back and bite us in the arse.
And it's also equally not something that we want to do what we're doing with, which is to sort of just label it so heavily and then make it the group which we can all pick on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really operating like any playground bully would do.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
singling out that one group and singling them out and sort of say, well, they're the problem.
Yeah.
We've seen this a lot of times in history, and it never ends well.
No, that's right. Yeah, but what a massive shift though! What a radical shift from like 5 or 6 centuries ago, from being the structure / organisation that decided that they were like going to be the beacons of light in our society, and this is, you know, if you live through God's word as dictated by us, to now being on like dramatically on the outskirts. It's been a huge.
I mean, I think when you look at it, when you look at that organisation, they've lost a lot of influence and a lot of power around a lot of countries where they used to have particular sway, and in that one, I'm probably thinking about America mainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what a massive shift they've been on from the seat of influence of how people live their lives to now being a sort of almost pariah group.
A pariah group though, Carl, with a lot of money though, still.
A
lot of capital especially.
A lot of cash behind them.
Yeah. And perhaps that's going to be maybe their modus operandi, you know, moving forward, is how they can utilise their wealth rather than their word.
But as you were saying, I think the point to us is, as people, that we've got to actually maintain our sense of individual and independent thought.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing really safeguard we have against being told, well, there's the problem.
Yeah.
That's where we start to venture down a dangerous alleyway, as you say, that stems from the left.
Yeah.
But we're saying these groups are bad, these groups are good.
Yeah.
It's halfway between 1984 and Animal Farm.
Yeah, that's right, exactly, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you think about some of the exclusionary aspects of like the right as well, and the left will be quite often, you know, they're just as bad as each other, but like, you know, the left will be like, you know, it has to be about inclusion and adopting, you know, what was previously gay marriage and things like that, you know. But then if it's something they don't like, then it's like, no, we don't worry about that. You know, it's not part of our pie chart, so yeah, we'll do something else with that.
Yeah, that's not within the spectrum.
No, it's not within the spectrum, but it's very hypocritical. And I think we can be, as individuals, we can be very hypocritical by nature.
Well, that does bring you back to sustainability again and how we live our lives, because as we started out by saying, often people have gone down a road of do as I say and not as I do, and I'm quite happy to hand my problem off onto another group.
Yeah, that's right.
To sort out.
Yeah, it's just going to make my life easier in the short term, so thank you very much.
So, you know, I think we spoke about this last time, but personal responsibilities.
Right, accountability,
personal responsibility, not focusing on our rights so much as our responsibilities in life is probably where a lot of this stuff is at.
Spot on, Carl. That is so true. I think that shouldn't be in a vocabulary, I know, but that would be a good start for people to begin with, or if they're not already in it. Personal responsibility, personal accountability, the responsibility, like I said, because I think ultimately responsibility is the only true thing that gives us meaning in our life. Like without responsibility, we can have like passive sorts of meaning that are derived from outside, but really the only true meaning that we can feel and value in our life comes through the responsibilities we decide to take on. And if we decide to take on the responsibility of ourselves, what greater responsibility is there?
Yeah, and you know, if you think of it that way, if each of us, as we said before, if each person does their bit, is personally responsible for themselves, then collective actions follow.
Yeah.
Because each individual is making a responsible choice.
They are. That's right, yeah. Very good way to end it on, Cal.
Yeah.
I think that's a good note. Is there anything else we can... I wanted to talk to you about like water and things like that, but perhaps we'll do that for another podcast, because it's such a interesting and
fluid topic,
exactly. And it's lots of scope there, and all parts need to be considered. We spoke a little bit about petrochemicals and energy consumption and use, but there's lots of ways that engineering can help and be a part of that, all on a broader level. So
to finish on the joke, water is the god of engineers.
Is it? I don't get that joke. What is that? How does that mean? Is that because I'm not an engineer? I don't know.
Well, because without water there is no engineering problems.
Oh, okay, right. Sure. Okay, right. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, never thought about that before. But that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Water is, being serious, water is fundamental to life. No water, no life.
Sure.
How we treat our water is really, really important. And obviously from engineering space, we do lots with water. We view it as a problem, and we try and fix it, and we also try and treat it so we can drink it, and we try and make it.
I hadn't thought about that before. Of course, like how important water is to the makeup of engineering. Yeah. It's basically it, isn't it? It's like...
A lot of engineering is all about management of water.
Yeah, right.
It's either management of groundwater, management of floodwater, management of stormwater.
Yeah, building bridges.
Water, building bridges.
Yeah.
Building culverts.
Right. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Piping it.
Yeah. That's a big thing, isn't it? Okay, yeah, interesting. All right.
So hence, water is the god of engineers.
Cool. All right, well, how about, that'll be the title of the follow-up podcast. We'll have a look at the water in engineering thing. I think that's something I as a landscape architect, this is my first job in profession as a landscape architect, but I came out of university knowing what a culvert was and a swale, but really not much more in regards to water after that. So
landscapers have got so much to do with water as well.
I thought it was just plants, Carl.
Come on.
Plants and a bit of mulch. No, we do. We have a tremendous responsibility when it comes to that, but a lot of our tertiary education does not look at it at all. And it's something that I hope has changed and shifted since I was last at university 4 years ago, but I doubt it has. But the impact of water is something that needs to be considered by landscape architects for sure.
Oh, massively, because if we're going to get water back into our urban environments and into our cities and into the places where people are, landscapers have got to do that, because landscapers are so often creating the spaces that people use, because let's face it, people don't get excited by pipes. Sure. They get excited by parks.
Yeah, exactly. They do.
And that's where they'll see the value of the water in the park, in the public realm.
Definitely.
That the landscaper is the leader on.
And that's why it's also very important, I think, I've developed with the relationship with you here, is like the importance of landscape and engineering to work together on these as well. Like we've seen, a couple of instances now where there's been a fundamental breakdown in the engineering / landscape that's resulted in issues in regards to water. It's a very important thing to look at.
And when you look at some of the good solutions as well that come out, because it's all about knowing where your influence is best and where you actually need to hand over to other people to try and guide and direct. When we've done that effectively, we get far better outcomes for the world around us. Yeah, we do. Nice one, Carl. We'll keep that on light, that one. I'd like to discuss that further sometime in the future. But thanks very much. No problem.
For being on the podcast, and thanks very much for listening. And we'll see you next time.